All right. Well, hello, everybody. This is the Sunday afternoon session. It's 4 o'clock here in Thailand, and that this is the UK Sangha that is timed for Europe. We also have a call on Saturday morning, time for US evening time um, on Friday evening. So today we have a request, and we're going to be talking about the Sato Sambojana or the Sambojana, um, the 7 factors of awakening. But I would like to make a comment that was posted by uh, Chris here about the 37 factors of awakening. And I'd like to spend a couple of moments on that because he's mentioning that we're going to be doing perhaps all of the sections. First off, let's look at the number 37. 37 is actually an addition of 4 plus 4 plus 4, 3 fours, and then 2 fives, which are actually the same thing, and then 7 and 8. And that gives the 37 factors of enlightenment. However, you can think of it as let us say that you've got 7 Christmas gifts under the tree, and each of the 7 has a number on it, talking about the number of toys inside. And you say, wow, I have 37 different toys. But after you've opened those boxes, you begin to see a whole lot of duplications. That's now I don't know where the number 37 came from, but it could have either come from later times. It could have come as with the Visuddhimagga. I'm not sure where the number 37 comes from, but the 37 are actually mostly talked about in the Abhidhamma. However, the first mention of them as a list is in the Sutta number 16 in the Dinga Nikaya, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Now, a word about the Dinga Nikaya is fairly well understood by the scholars that this is later literature, that this is actually also a compilation of various things, and that it looks like that it came from the time of Ashoka. And one of the scholars says that this was actually compiled as propaganda to get Brahmins to convert to Buddhism. Now, with that in mind, we can look at the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Now, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta actually is the story of the Buddha's death. Now, it's very easy to see by a little research that much of the Mahaparinibbana Sutta was actually copied almost word for word out of the Udana, and that the Udana is known to have predated the death of the Buddha as written literature, as well as the Sutta Nipata. In fact, in places in the Anguttara Nikaya, the references that are made in the Anguttara Nikaya actually go back to actual suttas that are in both the Sutta Nipata and the Udana. So these are really, really old things, and that the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, as well as much of the Dinga Nikaya, is fairly new. And so I wanted to put that point out that there is really no such thing as the 37 wings of awakening from the time of the Buddha. However, we can see that all of these items, the 4 and the 4 and the 4 and the 5 and the 5 and the 7 and the 8 are all in various suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya, where they're actually talked about as a feature. And so somebody then gathered all of these together as just a list for the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, and then later they went wild by adding them up. And so if you actually dissect it and look and get the various ways, you can see that sati is the most common. Wow, is it the most common? Then, in fact, the 4 foundations of mindfulness are all listed, each one. There's also sati in the 7 factors of enlightenment. Sati is in the almost in every one of them. And so there's not really 37. I haven't counted them up, but my guess is something between 12 and 15 maybe. And all the rest of them are duplicates. So when you ever run across 37 factors of enlightenment, don't go, oh no, there's too much to learn here, because most of it is just duplicated. And in fact, what we're going to do today is actually more or less a duplication also. Then, in fact, you could say that the Sambojana, the 7 factors of awakening, are actually developed skills of awakening, and that they more or less coincide with the Eightfold Noble Path, almost item by item. The first 4 or 5 actually do. And you can see where the other of the 7 factors of enlightenment come from. So let's get into it. Now, one of the things that we can say is that the 7 factors of enlightenment is actually a way of thinking about chronological development, as opposed to using the Anapanasati, because the Anapanasati Sutta is talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, but things are not developed chronologically in that order. They're just listing things. And so the Anapanasati Sutta basically has the 4 foundations of mindfulness as its base. And so when you see in the 37 factors of awakening, the first item on there is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. That's where you can actually see then the Anapanasati overlapping that directly. Also, the Anapanasati Sutra has the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the way that it's stated is that we practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. In other words, this is the how-to sutta, and that we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness for the fulfillment of the Sambojana. Now, here's an interesting point: is that we practice the Anapanasati practice in order to fulfill the Eightfold Noble Path. It's interesting also that there is 2 sutras, by the way. The Satipatthana Sutta is number 10 in the Majjhima Nikaya, and then an expanded version, number 22 in the Digha Nikaya. And you can see that the Digha Nikaya, again, is more or less just a copy and paste of other sutras, mostly from the Sutta number 10. But there's a point in the Sutra number 10 that I want to point out, and that is that there's a place in there where the 4 foundations of mindfulness in the Sita part, the third, the Sita Nupassana, that in the number 10, you have the Eightfold Noble Path. And in the Anapanasati Sutta, in that same area, in that same place, you will find, in fact, the 7 factors of enlightenment. So that's another kind of an indication that they're actually the same thing, and that the distinction between the Eightfold Noble Path and the 7 factors of enlightenment is that one is where you start. That's the beginner. That's the very, very beginning. And that the Sambojana is then the skills that have already been developed sufficiently enough to be factors of awakening. So that makes it a whole lot easier for people rather than saying, oh, there's 8 of that and 7 of this and 5 of that and 5 of this and 4 of that, and it's all just a big mess. We can say, oh, no, these are just various ways of looking at basically the same thing from various angles. So let us also say that there is a key word that is used in the um, 7 factors of enlightenment, and that key word is unremitting, to where all of the items in the Anapanasati Sutta, there is another key word, and the key word there is thus one trains oneself. So you can see then that we're talking about the beginner's path that trains to get these things, and then the trained one has then the 7 factors of enlightenment as part of his let us say features and package rather than training tools. If we can understand it that way, then that gives us a very easy way to put this kind of stuff together so that we can come up with the point that the teachings of the Buddha are actually quite simple. There's not really that much to it. It's just that because it's been taught, even in the time of the Buddha, in various ways, it looks like that it's all different, and everybody has to learn a whole lot of stuff instead of just recognizing it's just the same thing over and over and over again, taught in a different order or a different way. So, does anybody have any questions there before we get started into the actual 7 factors of enlightenment? No questions. Right. Wow, what a crowd we've got today. 20 people. Or 19 plus the bot that's doing the recording. So, oh, I see that Daniel is on. Welcome, Daniel. Good to see you. And Dietrich, got some old friends today. All right. So, let's get into the 7 factors of enlightenment. And that the 7 factors of enlightenment means the 7 skills that are to be developed, or a better way of saying it, the 7 skills that you have already developed that lead to you saying that I'm awake, I can see. Okay. Now, the first item on the list is the one that I mentioned that's the most common, and that is unremitting sati. Unremitting mindfulness, they call it, but the word mindfulness really does not work. The English language word of mindfulness is not really what we're talking about here. You could say, in fact, that mindfulness has the quality of minding, which means looking at, but it also has the quality of remembering to look. And that's what sati really is all about. It's the remembrance. And so this is a skill that needs to be developed. And what are we remembering? We're remembering to be here now, this present moment. If we're going to investigate something, we can only investigate what we can see right here, right now. A really easy example for that would be that the astronomers they build bigger and bigger telescopes because they've got a friend called the speed of light, and that the further things are away, when the light arrives to us, we see it in the past, millions and billions of years ago, is because the light comes. Well, in our own personal practice, we don't have far to go. I mean, the speed of light is only like what 1 nanosecond or so is all it takes for the circuitry to work. So that means that we cannot really live in the past or investigate the past the way that the astronomers can, because things are happening too fast. And so when we mean unremitting mindfulness, that means that we are coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back, moment by moment by moment by moment, to look at what's going on right now. Not what happened 10 seconds ago, not even something that happened a second ago. But we keep coming back right here, right now, unremitting, keep coming back and coming back and coming back over and over. Now, there's a cycle. The reason why it's actually called unremitting is because other things are going to be going on, and that we want to keep it in a tight cycle, as opposed to always sati. Always sati is not possible, but we could keep coming back over and over and over and over and over again. Now, one of the things that very beginners will run into is, by practicing correctly a little bit, by having sati of right now, and then they'll do the second one of investigation, and then the third of making a change. The example would be, I've got a thought of, oh, this is a big problem. And then we have sati and say, oh, I saw that thought of, oh, this is a big problem. And then we change that thought to, oh, there's nothing to it. Everything is all right. And then the next thought is going to be, oh, no, it really is a problem. And most people miss that. They miss bringing sati back immediately to take a look at the second thought that comes in. And so this is one of the skills that beginners have to learn, is to keep looking and keep looking, because the unwholesome thoughts are, a way of saying it is, they're spring loaded. Another way of saying it is that they're the habit, they're the rut. And if you're going to be driving on some of the dirt roads that I was driving on as a teenager, you have to be quite looking. You have to remember to look where you're going, or you're going to wind up in the rut. That we want to make sure that when we're driving on these old dirt roads, that we're not going to be driving on the same rut that the last guy did. We're going to create our new rut. Otherwise, we might get stuck in that old rut. And so the mind also has these ruts, these habits, and it's really easy to fall right back into the habit, the way that I just mentioned. Okay, and so another one would be, all things are terrible and I don't like it right now. And then we wake up and we can see that thought, and then we make a change to it and say, oh, well, I'm okay right now. In fact, I'm joyful. And then the next thought that they will have will be, oh, no, you're not joyful. You're not joyful enough. This is not good enough. And we need to be able to see that thought too, so that we can change it. So one thought after another needs to be changed from the unwholesome into the wholesome. We can even do 2 or 3 or 4 in a row, and then the unwholesome thought will come. So be on guard for that. Unremitting mindfulness is what we need to develop, or better still, unremitting sati, unremitting, remembering to look at every thought that comes by, because the unwholesome thought is very likely to tail right behind the wholesome thought that you had effort to put in. So, does anybody have any questions about unremitting sati before we go on? No questions. All right. So, the next item on the Sambojana is unremitting investigation of the states. Unremitting investigation, which means we remember to look and then we investigate every thought. Now, one of the biggest important skills to be developed is the ability to have the discernment to discern whether a thought is wholesome or not, whether the thought is dukkha provoking or not, or whether the thought is a hindrance or not. Now, these three things that I just said are basically all the same, because a hindrance is actually an unwholesome thought and it leads to dukkha. So we need to keep watching to see if this thought is unwholesome. We need to watch. We need to practice watching. We need to get into seclusion so that we can start paying attention to what's happening in the mind rather than letting the mind wander into the senses of the eye, the ear, taste, touch, etc., like that. And so we need to be somewhat secluded. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to actually today, right now, go to the forest, go to the foot of a tree, go to an empty hut. But most of us have a room that we could be in. Our own bedroom can be our empty hut. And so we get ourselves secluded from the cell phone, secluded from other people, secluded from sensory input, and start watching the thoughts that roll by one at a time. And as we see these thoughts, we begin to then label them. Is this thought worth having or not? Now, the ordinary mind will see a thought and say, "Oh, it's okay," without recognizing the dukkha that's built into it, because it's actually just part of their habit. So, what we would like to do then is to recognize that every thought that you have can be improved. Any thought. So investigate every thought, because every one of them can be improved. But in fact, if you have a thought that is so spectacular, so wonderful, so blissed out, at least you can improve that by congratulating yourself for having it. So now we can look at the third item, the unremitting, what is called energy. Now, unremitting energy actually comes from the effort of the Eightfold Noble Path. That people will say, "Oh, this practice is hard. This Eightfold Noble Path is difficult. That I can see it, but I can't change it." And the answer to that is, "Oh, it's easy enough to change. Just recognize that it's likely to fall back just back where it was before, and you need to change it again, to change it over and over and over again." That imagine, in fact, that you're polishing an old metal object, say an old rusty knife. And so there you get your cleaning cloth out, or perhaps sandpaper, and you start scraping on the surface of that, and then you blow it off and you look at it, and it's still rusty. "Oh, I've wasted my time. It's still rusty." Well, no, you have to keep cleaning it and keep cleaning it and keep cleaning it and keep cleaning it. And fairly soon you'll get down past the rust. That's the same way that they do with rough wood, is that they sand it with coarse, and then they sand it with medium, and then they sand it with fine, and then they polish it with a polishing cloth. This is how we actually operate with the mind also. But also take this into consideration, that the first time you practice, if you see that thought as unwholesome and dukkha, and you change it to a wholesome thought, right then and there, you're enlightened for that moment. That this is not a long-term process. Every time that you're cleaning the mind, that's all there is to it, is cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. And pretty soon, well, for a while, it doesn't look like much results are happening. And then all of a sudden, you take a very close look and you recognize, wow, things have really changed because I kept doing it. Now, as we keep doing this right noble effort, in the beginning, the effort seems to be quite a lot. There's a lot to it. It's a struggle for some people to change that thought. The change is spring loaded, and the springs are pretty heavy duty from habit. But if we keep making those changes over and over and over again, then you can think of it in two ways. Either that part of the mind that's pulling that string, that effort that you're taking is beginning to build up. It's beginning to become a skill now, or the spring itself is getting weaker. And then actually, the reality is that both of those things are true. Both the old habits are getting less powerful, and also you're developing the skill to change them. So in the Sambojana, we don't use the word unremitting effort because there's no effort to it anymore. You've developed that skill. And so here we're using the word energy, unremitting energy. You've got it. You've developed it. And so things, an example of what I'm talking about is imagine that you've got a jack in the box is in your play toy box, but it's an old jack in the box, about your age. And you know that you crackle the crank and you sing the song, and then pop goes the weasel, and the door opens, but the jack doesn't come out. You got to go take your hand and put it in there and pull it out because the spring has gotten old or whatever. So that means you have to take effort to get the jack to come out of the box. But if you keep doing that over and over again, fairly soon when you turn the crank on the jack in the box, it will pop out because now it's got some energy that's stored in the spring. But keep pulling it and pulling it. And so this is the way that we want to look at this idea of it changes then from right noble effort into unremitting energy. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Hi, Dhammarato. I was wondering, how does one handle the gaps between the thoughts?
Happily.
Uh, so it's okay to have gaps between the thoughts. There is no need to push wholesome thoughts onto it.
Actually, I would say that you're fairly well ahead of the beginner's game into the intermediate in the sense that the Buddha talks about it in Sutta number 19 as having one wholesome thought after another wholesome thought after another wholesome thought after another wholesome thought, in the sense that you don't have to whack them into shape, that they've gotten fairly energetic in that way. And in that time, then we can start allowing gaps between those wholesome thoughts with the understanding that the next thought that's going to come after the gap is going to be a wholesome thought, not an unwholesome thought. That this is actually the problem with practicing the higher jhanas is that when somebody comes out of the higher jhanas, the only place they've got to go is back into the hindrances. This is why we want to practice and practice and practice having unremitting one wholesome thought after another after another. We're able to sustain those wholesome thoughts so that when we have gaps in them, when the gaps are filled in with new thoughts, the thoughts are wholesome again. So this is the practice that we have, is to have one wholesome thought after another. That's the skill. It would be considered a different skill for later practice to put those gaps in there. So let's not worry too much about that right now. Let's go ahead and talk about the factors of unremitting energy. And so with unremitting energy, that comes in to actually, we need now to look at the Anapanasati Sutta for a moment. Imagine that if you have wholesome thoughts, then the wholesome thoughts are going to be joyful thoughts. In the Anapanasati Sutta, it talks about it in the sense of gladdening the mind. Now, what we mean by gladdening the mind is not the wholesome thought itself, but that the wholesome thought influences the state of mind, so that we're developing the state of mind And so, going back to the investigation, it says unremitting investigations of your state of mind. This is actually more important than if you can look at the state of mind. That's more important than to looking at just the thoughts. But the beginner starts with his thoughts. And so, what we need to do then is to unremittingly remember to look at what state of mind do you have? Is your state of mind that of a novice, of a loser, of a beginner, or is your state of mind that of a winner? Are you in the state of mind of being a victim? Things are hard, things are difficult, I need help. All of those are things that victims have. But if you have an unremitting um, investigation of the state of mind, that means that you're developing the state of mind into the mind of a winner. I've got this. I can do it. The Buddha was, in fact, referred to often as both a lion and a bull. So we're developing the mentality of a bull, of a lion. Now, when I say bull, I'm talking about an elephant bull, a bull elephant, not a male cow, because that's what the Buddha was referring to as a bull. All right. In other words, you own this forest. You own your own mind. You've got that attitude, I can do this. And so you need to then to continually investigate, are you on top of the situation or is the situation on top of you? Are you under the situation? You see, people often talk about, he made me mad. No, that's not possible. You decided to be mad because of your own habit patterns. But somebody can say the same thing and he can't make you mad. Only you can see that you can be made mad because you choose to do that because of your old habits. But now we're not going with the old habits, we're going with the new habits. And the new habit is he doesn't know what he's talking about. A way of looking at it is, imagine if somebody shot an arrow at you. Are you going to stand up and let him hit you with that arrow? Or are you going to dodge it? And that arrow goes right by and says, ha ha, you missed me. You can't touch me. So that's the attitude that we're looking for, that unremitting investigation of the state of mind of being the champion, being an excellent dodgeball player. Now, with that and with the gladdening of the mind brings joy. Just like somebody who is a victim, that's not a joyful state. That's being the underdog. That's being on, someone's on top of you. You've got a bully messing with you. But when you have that unremitting state of investigation of the states of mind, so that you have that noble attitude, in the Pali it's called Sammasankappa. In the Pali, actually, this is in the Eightfold Noble Path, that we develop that Sammasankappa, and with that comes unremitting joy. Unremitting, the Pali word is piti sukha. Now, there is a difference between piti as a separate word and sukha as a separate word, versus in the Pali, the word piti sukha, putting them together, is actually more of high quality sukha. Now, the word sukha is a very interesting word in the sense that it's exactly opposite to the word dukkha. That's true in the Pali, it's true in Thai, and it's true in Gujarat, and I suppose all of the languages that have that twin pair, Sukha and Dukkha, are opposites. Well, now you can see that the only thing that the Buddha teaches is Dukkha and coming out of it. So if you have unremitting Sukha, that means then you've got no Dukkha. Unremitting, you keep coming back and keep coming back to the joy. You keep recognizing, hey, this is great. I've got this wired. Okay. So, with that unremitting sukha, that leaves us with unremitting relaxation. We don't get uptight. It's almost impossible to get uptight when you're joyful, when your attitude is that of a lion. And so this is actually something new now. All four of the first ones are actually part of the Eightfold Noble Path. So let's establish that for a moment. That in the in the Great 40, Sutta number 117, which is an exposition on the Eightfold Noble Path, the Buddha says that today he's going to talk about right organization of mind with its supports and features. Well, we have just now covered the supports. So when you have the support of unremitting remembrance, unremitting sati, and unremitting investigations of the state of mind, unremitting energy coming from right noble effort, and that energy then is allowing us to have that piti sukha. These four things then are the part that's in the Eightfold Noble Path, with this sukha part being part of the Samasankappa. That then leads us to the next one, which would be unremitting relaxation. Now, unremitting relaxation, or even relaxation, is not actually an item in the Eightfold Noble Path. However, it really is in the Anapanasati Sutta. And so we get that relaxation by relaxing the body. And we relax the body by actually investigating the body to see what tensions are there so that we can relax them, noting that any tensions that are in the body, we talk the body into that tension with our unwholesome thoughts. So when we're not having any unwholesome thoughts, then the tensions are not going to be there in the body, and the body will relax. So with that, we now go to the next one. And the next one is that part of the Eightfold Noble Path. Here it is said, unremitting samadhi. What does the word samadhi mean here? Is that state of mind that is whole, unified. You've heard other traditions talk about duality and singularity. This is what we mean by that in the teaching of the Buddha, is that your mind is unified. It's together. It's whole. There's no division. There's no arguments inside. In other words, there's no unwholesome thoughts, because we are unremitting over again, coming to this state of being together, being at one mind. So with these 6 items comes upekkha. Now, upekkha is translated as equanimity, but somebody made that word up. Without Buddhism, I don't think equanimity is even in the English language. Somebody made that one up. Why? Because they couldn't think of a one-word definition of upekkha. So let's talk about what actually upekkha means. A better word, I would say, would be balance, but perhaps even a better word of saying it is the phrase dynamic balance. Why? Because, for one thing, only a very, very few, like number would be under 20 people in the entire world, sit all day long and all in the meditation hall practicing. Nobody does that, and I don't think anybody here wants to have that as their goal. Oh no, everybody wants to have a life. They just want to live it happily. They don't want to be in seclusion all the time. And in fact, being in seclusion all the time may not even help. So the story is that there was some Westerner who went to Tibet, and after a long session or so, they put him into seclusion for 3 years. And there he was up on the top of the mountain. Somebody would bring food on a regular basis, and he stayed up there for 3 years. And then they went, they went to get him. They drove a car up. He got in the car, and on the way down the hill, it freaked him out. The bumpiness of the car was too much for him, and he said, "Stop the car, I'm getting out." And he walked back up to the hill because he couldn't tolerate riding in a bumpy car. Now, I wonder how much upekkha he was able to get while he was in seclusion for 3 years. In fact, probably the reason why these guys, these 20 or so people who spend their entire lives sitting in seclusion, sitting in a meditation hall, is because they can't even handle standing up and walking across the street. But you don't want to live like that. You want to actually develop your mind so that you can handle anything that comes by. You can handle insults, you can handle all kinds of stuff. And so the example that I would give you here is imagine that you're on the deck of a large fishing boat. In fact, there's a story that on the fishing boat was the captain of the ship, of the boat, and he had been on that boat for many years. And even though the wives would toss that fishing boat back and forth, he was actually quite capable of handling whatever that boat did. But he had a guest, and that guest was actually a professor who researched fishing and stuff like that. But what he didn't have was called sea legs. And so when that boat was out there in the ocean with the waves, the captain and this professor were sitting at the bow of the ship, and the captain says, "Well, I'm going back to the stern," and he just walked back there. The college professor got up, and he couldn't handle that. He was over the side. He was throwing up over the side. He was bouncing into the cabin. He was doing all kinds of things, hanging on, trying to get his balance when the floor underneath him, the deck, was not stable. So how in the world can you start to live your life so that even when your floor is not stable, your mind is still stable? This is what we mean by upekkha. That even though everything around you is in chaos, you're not in chaos. You don't let things happen to you. And the only way that you can be in that state is by having that unified mind. And the only way you can have that unified mind is by being at peace. The only way you can have that peace is by having that joy. The only way you can have that joy is because you've got that energy. And that energy comes from the investigation going right back to unremitting mindfulness. So all 7 of these factors work with one another. This is almost a different way of talking about dependent origination. We start with unremitting mindfulness, unremitting be here now, unremitting investigation, unremitting energetic, unremitting joy, unremitting peacefulness, unremitting stability of mind, right organization of mind. They call it concentration, but I prefer not to use the word concentration because some people think that concentration means you leave something out, to where samadhi means that you gather all of the factors together. You make a huge unified mind state, and only with that can you have then unremitting upekkha. Unremitting means that you keep doing it and keep doing it. You develop that so that it doesn't matter what happens, you can handle it. Even when you're coming down the mountainside in the back seat after you've been in tranquility, meditation, and seclusion for 3 years, even though the car is bouncing, you can handle that. Even when the IRS sends you a letter, be at our office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Okay, I'll go show up. I'll be all right. Whatever happens, you've got it. These then together are the 7 factors of awakening. One leads to the other. And when you can handle anything, because your mind is organized, because you're at peace, because you're joyful, because you're energetic with your practice, unremittingly, because you're investigating, because you're here now, those things put together make these 7 factors of awakening. Ta-da! That's basically all there is to it. There's not that much to it. So, Ivan, you've already gotten your microphone on. So, what do you think?
I was thinking like Upeka is like you said, dynamic balance. I usually associate it with the mind being unmoved. Like the mind is not moved with either battle or it's just still. I
Okay,
mean that's
I'm not against that. Right, that you're solid.
mm. Is it because the equanimity, that word sounds too dry? I mean, I don't know.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is that you cannot have complete upekkha without also having developed joy, and they both need to be there unremittingly.
mm. Mm.
Unremittingly as a team, as opposed to all of them are done all the time, because that's not possible. We have to understand that, in fact, that the mind works with one thing at a time, almost like a computer instruction set. The old computers, nowadays, nobody knows about how to build a computer unless they're taking courses in electrical engineering, electronic engineering. But a computer, also, like the mind, can only do one thing at a time. It can load a register, it can add, it can store, but that takes 3 cycles. All right. And so you can think of the mind as operating like that. You can only do one thing at a time. But then you come back to that cycle. You keep doing the same things over and over again. Unremitting mindfulness, or unremitting remember to be in the present moment. Because if you forget to be in the present moment, the next wave that comes by is going to throw you overboard. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Here's another way of looking at it. Imagine that you're on a teeter-totter with a friend, and you go up and you go down and you go up and you go down, and you can ride that up and you can ride that down. The teeter-totter is not stable, but your experience of riding the teeter-totter is stable. You can handle it. Even if your friend, while you're up in the air, jumps off of it, having the gravity pull you down quickly. That's okay. You can handle that. You can stick your legs out and catch it. You're not going to get hurt. You're not going to fall off. You're going to be happy.
A quick question. I think that's why in first jhana, Upeka is not listed. It's more like second or third because the joy comes first. Just
Yes. The first jhana then would be those first items up to, in fact, right organization of mind. Often the first jhana uses the word samadhi, right unification of mind. And with that development of that first jhana, over and over and over and over again, comes that ability to sustain it, so that whatever happens, you can stay in that first jhana, which is now the upekkha. So even upekkha can be developed, or actually the first jhana can be developed well enough so that that upekkha will come.
mm.
In other words, whatever happens is not going to throw you out of first jhana. You're going to stay in that first jhana. You're going to be equanimity or equanimous or whatever those words are. Okay, so let's see. How about you, Chris? What do you think?
I have a have a bad
Go
joke.
ahead.
It's first of all, it's always fun on Zoom to watch people try to say. Will I get it right? Equanimous. You're right. It's not an English word. Nobody uses this word. Our tongues don't know how to do that. But I do have a question. So I'm looking at a list. Can you hear me okay? My mic was
Yes, I
bad
can hear you
before.
fine.
Okay. So I'm looking at a list of the Pali versions of these 7 words.
Uh-huh.
And I recognize 6 of them, but I have no memory of the Pali words of running into the Pali word for calm before. Does this show up much in the scriptures?
Yeah, the Pali word is pasya.
Pasadi.
Okay.
Yeah, pasadi.
Now, pardon? Pasadi.
Pasadi.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's an interesting point about that. Is that one of the translations of that word is tranquil. But every time I hear the word tranquil, I also hear tranquilized. Then I see the hunter with his tranquilizer gun shooting the lion, and there the lion is tranquilized, which means he's out of it. He's asleep. He's filled with drugs. He's anesthetized. We don't want to use that word in that sense. That pasadi actually has the quality of being relaxed, not having those chemicals in the body that we produce, like adrenaline, cortisol, and whatnot, that we've got just enough dopamine. Everything is good. And so we're not going to use the word tranquil because that doesn't fit.
So
Again, it's active. Go ahead.
I mean, the 7 factors of awakening appears to be a key concept for the early Buddhist teachings, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Huh?
Go
I'm
ahead. I
sorry.
didn't catch you.
So, did I freeze?
No?
I don't know what happened. And I lost my train of thought. So, but why do I not know this word, pasadi? Why all the other words like you said, sati shows up constantly in all the main teachings. Where
It's
does
actually used in the Anapanasati Sutta for the fourth.
here we go. Okay. So
It's in the
that's the 4th
Anapanasati
step.
Sutta. It's number 4 item.
Okay.
Pasati means to have the body relaxed. This is, in fact, why I use that when doing guided meditation or talking about the practice. I say relax. Take a deep breath and let that out breath be relaxed. Relax. Okay, so that's what we're actually practicing right there. That's item number 4 of Anapanasati. So who's next? Mr. Ben.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dhammarato. All good. It does. It's easier the more you do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good.
Yes, you can do this. You do the Eightfold Noble Path over and over and over and over again, and that's the skill development that you need to actually be doing this unremittingly. Ah, Karwan. Hello, Karwan. What you up to, boy?
Hello, Dhammarato. Dhammarato, sorry, I was late for the first half of the call. Can you hear me?
Barely. It's kind of faint. I'm listening.
I have not much to say, but yesterday my neighbor, she had lost her keys, and I went to help her. So I climbed into her window, a small window, and I went in her house and to open the door from inside. while doing so, I broke my phone. I broke my phone and I broke my pants. But so I helped her. And while broken my phone, I thought, oh fuck, now I cannot access my money. In Thailand, you need phone for my basically since yesterday I'm now without money, and that also I'm trying. I think I'm doing very good job at it. I'm trying to be relaxed without having access to money. That little bit of money that I had, basically the last few weeks and few months, money is just something that gives me a lot of stress. I can be. I practice very well. I do my practices. I do. I'm in calls. But money is something that just repeatedly coming up. Repeatedly coming up. Stress around money, and yeah.
All
So how
right.
to?
Well, the first question that I have to ask is, what broke? Was it the cell phone that broke, or was it you that broke?
Well, it was the screen of the phone, but yeah, it broke also. Yeah, probably a part in me.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when your cell phone broke, you decided to break too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Notice that that's just an old habit. When you were a kid and a toy broke, you didn't like the toy broke. And you made all kinds of excuses about how bad things were, how your life was ruined because you broke a toy. All
Yep.
right. So there's actually easy solutions to that. In fact, here on Koh Phangan, I'm sure that the same thing is even more true on Pattaya, that you can find repair stores. Perhaps there's even a dealer for that particular kind of cell phone, and you can go get the screen replaced.
I will.
But
I
it's
will.
better to go ask them to do that when you're in a good mood. Don't go in there and slam the phone down on the counter saying, damn this phone, and you guys are the repair shop. Why don't you get it fixed? Well, he's not going to be in a good mood with you being in that attitude.
Yep.
So go get yourself into a happy mood through practice of the Eightfold Noble Path and Anapanasati. And when you do, now you can go get the cell phone fixed happily.
Yep.
Because it wasn't you that broke. It was the cell phone. Nothing to it.
It is
Now,
just no.
there's more. There's wisdom. Can I bring that point in? Because that's actually part of the 37 factors of awakening that's not on our list. But the word panya actually is part of the Eightfold Noble Path when it's a noble point. And that is that you know in advance that your cell phone's going to break. How many of you have had the same cell phone for 13 years? How about 20 years? Anybody had an original 2006 cell phone? Anybody here got that? No. No, you don't. What does that mean? That means that you have to replace them often. What does that mean then? Okay. So the way I'll tell you what just happened. We had 2 laptops break. One 2 weeks ago, and then just the other day we had another one. What did I do? I ordered 2 new laptops, even though I've still got this one. I have watched so many laptops die over the past more than 20 years that I want to make sure I've got another one, that I've got it all hooked up and ready to go before the one that I'm using breaks, because they break. Laptops don't last for 4 or 5 years, maybe 7 years at the most. But 10 years, in fact, the first one that broke was 10 years old. It was still running, but then it broke and it's dead. But guess what? I was ready. All right. So, what I would recommend for all of you, including Karwan, is don't count on one cell phone. Don't count on one hospital. Don't count on one friend. Okay? Go get yourself another cell phone and get all the stuff. Exactly so. There's a wise monk for you. Okay. I only have one cell phone, but I don't need one cell phone because I've got 3 laptops to back up each other. But I'll probably, after this conversation, go and get another cell phone. Okay. So I'll leave you with this one. Have you ever heard of the Boy Scouts? Boy Scouts of America. Rick has heard of the Boy Scouts of America. How about you, Bean? Have you heard, Ben? Have you heard? Okay. What's the motto of the Boy Scouts of America? What's their motto? Anybody know? It's only 2 words.
Be
Be prepared.
Prepared.
Pardon?
Be prepared.
Be prepared. Exactly. All right, Skarwan, you were not prepared. That's why when the cell phone broke, you broke too. It's because you weren't ready for the cell phone to break.
I was even thinking, actually, a few weeks ago, I was even thinking I should have some money with me all the time. You know, not in the bank, just at home for the moments like this moment. So I have at least a few $100. That I don't have. So now, yeah, I was not
Exactly
prepared.
so. Have some pocket money.
Yeah.
Be prepared. And in fact, the way to go shopping is be prepared by having just enough money. Why? So when you see that magical new item that brings up desire, I didn't bring enough money for that. I can do without it right now. So that doesn't mean walking around with a great big packet poly would, so that the money will burn a hole in your pocket, so they say. But yeah, have enough pocket money so that whatever happens, you're okay. Be prepared. In a way, you could say that that's one of the qualities of Opeka, is be ready, because your deck is going to slip right out from under you. Are you going to bust your ass, or are you going to catch yourself before you fall? Thank you, Dietrich, for knowing that motto. I find it funny because you're not even American. So you could say that that's actually part then of the practice of Anapanasati. Your wisdom is to tell you that things are going to break. Be ready for that. Be prepared. So, Amit, do you have something to say?
Thank you, Dhammarato. It's a great talk and the favorite topic of mine. Yeah, it's kind of very simple and very easy to keep in mind and then keep practicing. So I'm very happy that the teaching of Buddha are so simple and so operational. So can be done again and again very easily. I don't have to go into all these Pali books or. Yeah,
Unless
thank
you
you.
find that pleasurable and enjoyable. As you can see, I've been into them, and so is Chris. Go play with
Yeah,
the poly. It's a lot of fun.
definitely one day. Once my upeka is really very highly developed.
All right. So, Timo, do you have something to say?
I'm sometimes a little bit confused when you talk about the beginning of the practice, since the how-to of it is anapanasati, but you talk about it as looking at the thoughts, changing the thoughts. Where does looking at the breath come in? I mean, I have an answer for myself, but maybe you could, maybe you could say something about that. So
right.
If that makes
Yes.
sense, the question.
Let me say a little about that. That many people, especially in the Western Buddhism, they have the idea that anapanasati means mindfulness of breathing. And that's not correct. That's just the name of the sutta. But remember that in fact the Anapanasati Sutta is built upon all four foundations of mindfulness. You got to get your attitude or your state of mind correct. You got to get your feelings done. You got to get the body relaxed. You got to be able to manage your thoughts by seeing them and changing them. It's a complete practice. Everything about you needs to be done skillfully through the practice of anapanasati. And that we practice the anapanasati as the way or the method to practice the Eightfold Noble Path. And so they fit right together like that. And then you can see that once you have the anapanasati practice, that you're practicing all four of the foundations of mindfulness. And by doing that, that leads then to the Sambojana. And we actually practice the Sambojana for knowledge and deliverance. At the last part of both of the 118, the Anapanasati Sutta, and 117, the final phrase on both of those suttas is that we're practicing this for knowledge and deliverance. Both knowledge and deliverance. In other words, you can see how heavy it is, you can put it down. If you think that it's light and you can continue to carry it, then you're going to get tired carrying it around. So you have to see it first and then drop it. This is the whole practice. Whatever it is that you're carrying, let go, drop it, put it down. Not worth carrying. And where do we start? We start with unwholesome thoughts. We start with unwholesome attitude. We start with unwholesome feelings of anger, resentment, agitation. All of them are fear-based. And so anapanasati is actually a complete practice, even to the point of relaxing the body. So breathing meditation in and of and by itself doesn't even relax the body. You have to investigate the body to see where the tensions are and to recognize and see that those tensions that are in the body come from the mind. And when you get the mind straightened out, the tensions will leave the body and then it's relaxed. So don't make the mistake that anapanasati is a breathing meditation. There's a lot of breathing meditations and none of them are as liberating as anapanasati practiced the way that the Buddha has laid out the sutta. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, certainly. For me personally, I just when I enter into the practice, basically, like when I start with sati, I find it easier to go further after that through the feelings or the attitude or the body, because the thoughts are harder to tackle in and of themselves. The feelings, the attitude, the state of mind, let's say, or the state of the body are broad. They're more still. The thoughts are too rapid. So like which thought do I tackle and so on? It's too hard for me, and
This one,
that's where the question
this
came
thought.
from.
Yes, that's actually a common thing. In fact, you can see that in fact there's two practices. There's actually two eightfold paths. One of them is noble, and one of them is ordinary. The ordinary starts with the body. There's, in fact, you can see how that works in all cultures. Even in Islam, they start by teaching the little kids the rules. You got to behave yourself. Well, guess what? Nobody can behave themselves without actually seeing. Well, they don't see it, but it's the mind. The mind is the forerunner. And so the distinction is that we don't start with behavior. We don't start with the body and the feelings. In the noble practice, we start with the mind. We go directly to the source. That's why it's actually in another sutta. In fact, it's in the Satipatthana Sutta, that this is the direct path. Go directly to this thought. Now, you're saying that there are two paths for you. Well, see that you're having the thought, these thoughts are too fast for me. And recognize that is just another unwholesome thought. And so when you tell yourself these thoughts are too fast, you can say, wait a minute, I caught that. I see it. That's what we're talking about here. The direct path is, in fact, and then the next point would be one by one as they occur. Now, the one by one as they occur actually does support what you're talking about, because it's easier to see the body. It's easier to see the feelings. It's not so easy to see the attitude, and sometimes it's really hard to see these thoughts. And so one by one as they occur is beginning to see, but you can chase that back just a little bit by saying, oh, wait a minute, I feel bad, I feel anxious, I feel uptight, I feel whatever. What was I thinking that caused that? And back up just a little bit, just a second or two. What caused that feeling? And that will help you to get on in gear so that you can actually see the thoughts as they occur. And so that may be an introduction for you, is to go from the feelings, from the body to the thought. And but all four of them are there to be practiced: the body, the feelings, the actual mind states, and the actual mind's objects. So practice well. See those unwholesome thoughts that give rise to those feelings.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Rick, what you think?
Yeah, no, it's very good. It was funny how you mentioned that it's kind of like dependent origination, but in a different way. It's like a reverse dependent origination, which
Mhm.
is, yeah, a nice way of looking at it. So thank you for the insights.
All right. Animal, what you doing? What you think?
Relaxing. Everything is okay. Everything is good here.
Everything is good. All right. Paul, what do you think?
Was a valuable call. Lord, thank you.
All right. How about you, Santiago? Do you have a comment?
Right on. I don't know. I laughed a lot when I saw 9 months pull out 2 phones. But
I didn't catch that. Right before you laughed, what did you say?
I laughed when I saw 9 months pull out 2 phones.
Micah, can you help me with what he said?
Yeah, he laughed whenever Pra Chris pulled out 2 phones.
Yes, Chris is prepared.
Those were my second and third phones. I'm using my first phone on the video camera. But the second phone, the camera and the fingerprint sensor no longer work since the last rainy season, despite my best efforts. So,
Mm-hmm.
ta-ta-ta. Of course that's right. Of course they no longer work.
Well, of course they don't. Things break. I need to watch the Sankara cell phone. Okay, so Kashni, what do you think? Krishni.
Yeah. I love the explanation of samadhi, something I never thought before. I guess they translated it as concentration because they misunderstood what type of concentration it is. It's not concentrating on something, it's concentrating the mind into oneness.
Yes,
So I really like the
exactly.
explanation.
Exactly so. They didn't. Well, that's the whole problem with translators. Is every translator that I've ever met or seen what they're translating, they're students of the Pali. People who really know the Pali or really know what the Dhamma is and know what the teachings of the Buddha are, they're not going to be translating. Translators are students trying to learn the language. And that was especially true for the first dudes that did it, I.B. Homer and Riles Davies. They didn't have a clue. The thing that I find really amazing is that they did most of that research all on their own. They didn't even consult the Sri Lankan monks who probably knew exactly how to talk about it, except that Riles Davies and I.B. Homer didn't know Sinhalese either. But I find that quite amusing that the Asians are more likely to understand the sutras because they've had good translations for centuries. But getting their Thai or their Sinhalese or their Burmese translated into English is just as big a trouble as getting the Pali translated into English. All right, let's see who's next. Santiago. Arjun, what do you think?
Um, Explanation was good, and I like it the way you explained.
Okay. Mikey, can you help me with what he said?
They said that the explanation was good and that they liked what you explained.
Okay. So one last one, and that is destined destiny. Okay. Do you have any things to say?
Oh yeah. Uh, I remember starting with breathing meditation, and perhaps for me it was kind of unusual because at that time I had pretty bad intercostal neuralgia. It's just some kind of like nerve pain in your chest that you would have. And there were like various things that would activate that pain. And one of those things was if I sat down and tried to do this breathing meditation. So I saw that when I concentrated on my breath and I started like I tried to really focus on my breath. The more I focused on it, the more I tried to hold on to it, the more actual physical pain I would get.
Mm-hmm.
And I became quite fast disenchanted with it, considering the pain that came with it. And instead, I started doing meditation that was not focusing on the breath, but instead of the mind. And I guess for that reason, I was very quick to drop the breath and no longer bother with it.
All right. Well, now you can bring it back again. Now that you've got that sequence, recognize that you needed to actually work with the breathing, just not intensely or not every breath. That in fact, what you're saying, I've heard before, often in fact. Oh, I get tired when I'm practicing breathing meditation and other things like that. Or, oh, I get really uptight when I'm practicing breathing meditation. And I don't know why that people will take the word anapanasati, which means in breathing and out breathing, and think that it's a breathing meditation, because it's not. But the body and the breath are part of it. Let's say at best 25%, because there's 4. All right, so anybody have any last remarks before we finish it? This has been a big group, more than 20.
It,
I'd like to make a remark.
Yes, go ahead, Dietrich.
I think you covered a lot of ground. Lila, I mean, it was a nice, really big overview about all the terms people use and all the words that go around. So thank you for that. And I'm really glad it's recorded. I can hear it back because I'm going to more contemplate about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So anybody else?
make a rebellious remark. You know me.
I do. I'm learning.
I'd say breath and body are awfully close to feeling. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but they're you can't it's not, it's more than 25%.
Well, let's say this then, that let's make sure that we're not, when we use the word Vedana, we're not talking about emotion. That in fact we could go so far as to put emotion in the body. That's the anger is in the neck, it's in the fist, it's in the pumping of the blood, it's in the adrenaline. Also, anxiety, that's in the blood, that's in the chest. And so you're right if you use the word emotion, because emotion and body are exactly the same thing, especially on the inside of the body. That's where you find the emotions is within the body. But Vedana, more specifically, is part of attitude, in the sense of I like it, I don't like it, or I'm not sure whether I like it or not. I both or neither like it and dislike it. And so that's one of the major problems with Western Buddhism is that they take the word feeling and immediately think they're talking about the word emotion. But a really, really good way of seeing that is look how the word emotion works. Look at the word motion in there, and immediately you're back to the body. So I heartily agree with you.
The sutta says piti and sukha, and you can feel piti in your body.
Yes, you can.
And you can feel
Exactly.
sukha in your body. You can, I
You
mean,
sure can.
that's step 3.
Absolutely. That's right. Wow, joy is really feelable. Well, all right.
Yeah.
So, anybody else? This has gone a long time. I thought this was going to be a short call. Mikey, why don't you take this thing home?
Sure, here's a wholesome thought. Let's enjoy this breath right now. Thank you, friends, for being here today. Yes, this call will be up on YouTube later. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast service is. We're likely there. So, yeah, feel free to share these calls with friends and foes alike. We've been having more and more people join us here on Discord. You're also welcome to check out OpenSanghaFoundation.org. Find a lot that you can go to. There's individual
Make friends
instructors
there. There's a
listed
lot
there
of
as
people.
well. Yeah, we invite you to make some blog posts if you'd like to write down more about the practice. And for here on Discord, please go ahead and set up a day and time for a one-on-one call. Don't care if you're old or new. It's always nice to make friends in the Dhamma.
Yes, we have a lot of old students. What Mikey called seasoned students. And my seasoning is salt. I'm salty. Savory even. Okay, so we need to also mention that we've got a huge Facebook. Thank you, Dean. Dean's left already, but we've got we've only got like 630 people on this Discord group, but we've got more than 3,000 on Facebook. 3,000 friends on Facebook. So go post on Facebook too. And we've got a lot of people on Open Sangha Foundation. The thing that's interesting is that these things don't completely overlap the way that the 37 factors of awakening overlap. That there's a huge number of people that we don't even know that's part of our Facebook group. So go make some friends there too. Grab them by the cojones and bring them over to Discord, because this is where we do most of the fun stuff.
Dhammarato, maybe to do a live call on Facebook then. Maybe next time or sometime.
I don't
Instead-
even know how to do that.
If there is a Facebook group, it is possible to go live on Facebook itself. If there are 3,000 people, probably some of them don't know about Discord.
All right, why don't you talk to Mikey about how we're going to do that? I could.
We look into it.
All right. So one last chance to speak up. All right. Thank you all. This has been great. If you've noticed, it's sundown now. It's
Thank
going
you.
dark.
Thank
See you,
you.
Thank you, Dom.
Santiago.
It looks
See
so
you,
much
Ivan.
brighter where Mikey is. Mikey, are you on the? You're in the normal place, right? Looks like morning time where you are. Nighttime where Dhammarato
That's
is.
just camera.
Okay.
Even the camera sees this is a heavenly paradise.
Nice.
Thanks. See ya.
Yeah, this camera is the dark
Bye.
side of heaven. Actually, we've got a great big tarpaulin out right here.
Mhm. For the sun.
So that cuts out a lot of the light.
Yeah.
Where Mikey's actually in the sun.
Mhm. Take care. See you guys.
All right. He's just right there. Okay, see y'all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.